Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of The Inspired Actor. My name is John Ruby, and the man sitting across from me on Zoom is
Corbin Coyle. Hey, everyone.
Hey, Corbin. How you doing, bud? Today we've got a very special, different show than usual. We're going to kind of deep dive into the world of theater. So Corbin and I are going to chat about that, and hopefully you join us for the ride.
I'm excited for this one. It's going to be fun.
Every podcast, we like to mention our one fun thing. Corbin, do you have a one fun thing?
I do, yeah. I just started playing this game, Deathloop, and it's such an interesting
Okay.
game to me because it does the Groundhog's Day / Palm Springs, the new movie that just came out, where you're
Yep.
looping over and over again, which I think is very interesting way to do storytelling. And a lot of things don't do it right because it's hard to just repeat the same thing without frustrating your audience, and it just makes me realize like how good of a movie Palm Springs was with Andy Samberg. And it just brings back so many emotions for me of watching that and Groundhog's Day as a kid. Like,
Mm.
it's such a fascinating game, and I definitely recommend it.
And is that a board game?
No, it's a video game. So it's you're actually like looping through the same game. So you're picking up the same gun. You're trying to like, so the only constant is your memory and the things that you've learned through the game, rather than just like progressing through missions by doing killing this boss and then killing this boss. You have to kill all the bosses in one go, but that's after you've learned their weaknesses by going through the game so many times. And it's like kind of an interesting, and there's a person who's trying to kill you the whole time. So she'll like just show up out of nowhere and just like you're like you're just trying to run away from it, you know. Yeah, so it's an interesting game. I really recommend it. I think it's such a fascinating way to tell a story.
Great. And it's called what's it called again?
It's called Deathloop.
Deathloop.
Yeah,
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I love those ideas, the Groundhog's Day or Palm Springs,
for
that
sure.
kind of repeating thing. I think that's such a fun, interesting idea. So that would be cool in a video game. So my one cool thing, I actually have some travel stuff. And so one of the things I was thinking about, and I actually have a prop. Look at this. So for those watching on YouTube, these packing bags, Corbin, do you know
Okay.
what these are? Do you know what these
No,
are?
I can't tell really what it is.
So the idea is they go in your suitcase. And what it is it's a bunch of like little bags that like you roll up your clothes and you put it in there. Okay. And
Cool.
and it's life changing, Corbin. It's life changing. Like the amount of room you get in your bag and how organized it is awesome. So those packing bags. I mean, this I'm just trying to think.
So you
Like
just like
this.
roll your clothes in, shove it in, and then it kind of compresses everything into its own compartment. Just to,
Exactly. So you can kind of organize of like if you want to do it by days or by what what the
what
clothes
about
are.
wrinklage? Is there any wrinkle problems?
That's where the rolling helps, but yeah, there definitely is still some wrinkles, but it
Yeah.
helps so that your suitcase is not a mess. Like when you open it up and just everything
Yes.
explodes. These are called e-bags, but there's a bunch of different ones out there. We're not sponsored by them yet, but that was awesome. And then the other thing I got, it's a two-parter actually. I got this. I haven't used it that much. This is a portable solar power,
Oh, those are
like
great.
for like a cell phone. Yeah. So it's like what's that sound? The Velcro. But what's cool is you can do it. You can put it out in the sun wherever you are if you're traveling and stuff.
Hmm.
There's charger cords in here. That's Anchor, which is a pretty good. I might be saying it wrong, but like it's pretty good brand. But that's like kind of a fun one too, where like let's say you want to recharge. It's
Yeah.
slow. It's a slow charge, but
At
those are
least you
kind
can
of
do
cute.
it. You're out there and you need a charge. You gotta
Yeah,
find a way.
you
Gotta
gotta
use that
yeah.
big old sun in the sky.
Yeah, and actually, a buddy and I were heading out to the desert to shoot something, so for a documentary. So maybe I'll bring that and see how well it works. He's like, "We need power." I'm like, "I got it
I
right
got it.
here."
This will
It's gonna,
charge any camera.
it's just gonna be 8 hours. We just need 8 hours.
Yeah. No biggie.
So so today's topic, Corbin, we wanted to deep dive and discuss theater and the
Hmm.
value of it. Um, Corbin, I know you got into your first play. How's that
Yes, it's
process
true.
going?
It's
Yeah.
going well. It's completely different beast than anything I've ever done. Film, you can do it 6 times and you got to figure it out. There's a lot of obviously improvising, making sure that things go according to plan. We were doing a rehearsal and one of the seats, I kicked a thing that was like a piece of wood that fell down. It was just like, it was apparently a load bearing piece of wood for the chairs. So I was just like quickly had to fix it and nobody noticed. You just kind of have to keep going. Just little things, anything can happen. But it's fun, being able to be in that live element. One of the actresses, she plays my sister, so I make fun of her in a way, and she slaps me in the arm, and that was just not in the script, and just kind of those moments where she was like, sorry I did that. I was like, no, I love that. That was fun that we dove in and you felt the need to hit me because I was being an ass, you know?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's kind of a
Yeah.
fun little, I don't know, just completely different, very exhilarating. Excited to just kind of see what it's like to see that booked house right in front of my eyes as I'm stumbling through some words, but it's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's such a great thing. I'm so happy that you're doing that. You know, I went to Northwestern, which has a really great theater program, and of course, when I was there, I did zero theater.
Of course.
I was a German major, which is very useful now. But you know, one of the things, you know, being out in Los Angeles and Hollywood, I think TV and film and commercials, you know, kind of dominate, and so people not that they forget about theater, but there's a thriving theater scene here. You know, I think people associated a lot with Chicago and New York, which also have great theater scenes. But I think there's a lot of value for actors and writers and directors to dive into it. And, you know, there's such an interesting world. And like you're talking about, I think the process can be kind of cool to explore. You know, with what you're saying with like the brother-sister relationship, that's one thing. Sometimes if you're going on like a film set or TV show, you might, you know, meet that person that's going to play that part maybe at wardrobe or, you know, in the makeup or hair beforehand, but you might not have time to kind of rehearse it. I mean, you might do a table read together, but what's really cool, you know, how much time are you guys rehearsing before you have like your first show? Do you know?
We've met. We were supposed to meet 3 times so far, and then we're meeting tonight. But one of the nights we couldn't make it because there's some tech issues, and we basically they were just figuring it was a tech rehearsal, so they were trying to figure out all the tech, and then something broke, and they were like, "We'll release you. We'll do a Zoom thing, and we'll just go from there." But we're supposed to meet 4 to 5 times.
But a couple weeks leading up to your first show,
A couple
right?
weeks, yeah.
I think that's a kind of, it's not that it's a luxury, but it's a really nice thing to be able to have and kind of explore that, you know, explore that relationship.
For sure. Yeah. And it's interesting to see what changes when on the script too. And it's true with even in TV and film where you're looking at the script and you're like, this is how it's going to go. But then there's some limitations to the space or whatever, but that's heightened at a theater or at a play and like being in the space. So we were originally supposed to leave the room, but there's like a little alcove that's too small for 3 to 4 people. So now we're gonna leave the theater. So we're going up the aisle, and we're gonna do like a little bit. So we have to add a little bit more of that. It's a Halloween scary kind of based show, so we have to add a little bit more frightening why we're there. And we're trying to open the door, and just everybody's gonna feel like they're trapped in there, and like it's very cramped, and oh my god, we're gonna die. And then we finally leave through the exit that everybody else will leave, which is cool. No idea how that's going to work with running, or do we have to run all the way around? We'll figure that out tonight.
You have to adapt to the space, you know, in a theater.
Sure.
Like, you know, you've kind of got like the limited size of the stage and backstage and off stage, you know, you're talking about. And, you know, I don't know, for some reason it made me think of the most recent show I did was a play called The Last Man by by Gore Vidal. And one of the things is the space we were in at intermission, the audience walks like right by the stage, right? So they walk kind of, the exit was like right by the stage. And I had put in a request for my character who's playing like a politician who's running for some little, like the old school, like mints that you used to get at restaurants, like the buttery ones. You know the ones I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be really
God,
cool.
you're one of those actors.
Yes, I am.
This in this
I need this. Yes, I need it. Mostly I just like candy. So I was like, now I can, you know, it's like, you know, Corbin, I don't know if you know the rule, but like any cake or anything you eat while acting or rehearsing doesn't count towards calories. So I just, for all actors out there, just know, because you're doing it for the role. So it doesn't count. So
not how it works.
No, it's exactly how it works. So just you guys you can put that in bold print. So I asked for these like little like buttermints, you know, and they put them in a little bowl and they put them on my desk. And one of our shows, as the audience was walking out, I didn't see it, but someone else told me that one of the audience members, they looked so good, they reached on stage and grabbed one and ate it.
What?
And I was like, yes. And I was like, oh my, like, first of all, they could have been just props.
Yeah,
they could have been like and the person just, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, luckily they were fresh and they were edible. But the point was, I just thought, well, what a cool thing that, like, first of all, you shouldn't do that.
No.
But second of all, just the using the space in the way it was, you know, with them walking right by, it felt like, oh, okay, like, you know, like I could just grab it. These are for us, right? And I was like, no, they're not. But
it just shows that people don't fully grasp what we do. You know, like
Yes.
that's what's interesting about our craft is that we do it for other people, and it's supposed to look like it's supposed to feel real. It's supposed to be this weird element. They don't know how hard we work at making sure that isn't the case. So, for example, that could have been a prop bowl of a million just fake plastic marbles.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
there's only one in there that you've gotten really good at picking the right one out and putting in your
Yes.
face. And he had no idea, and he just went for it. And
Yeah.
luckily, his jaw is the same.
Yeah. Luckily they were okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So that was kind of an interesting experience. And also I think one of the things about theater, have you, Corbin, did you notice any differences when you're auditioning for like theater versus TV or film? Like when you auditioned for this project, did you feel any differences?
Yeah, I think theater, how to put this kindly, it's written in a way that you can dive deeper. It's not better or worse. It's just there's a little bit more, there's some more meat on the bone when it comes to the acting portion, because I think it has to be that way. You have to feel like you can really dive into that character and you're going to live that experience, because there's no cuts, there's no breaking. You're just in it for that long. So yeah, it was a little bit more of just a deep dive. I felt like I needed to really bring it my all, rather than just kind of like throwing something up that's like, you either like me in my face or you don't. It's more, can this person really transform into this? Yeah, it felt respectful, if it's kind of the way I would put it. What about you? Have you ever had anything like that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'm just thinking about that. I think one of the things I was thinking about with auditioning between like TV and film and theater is a lot of times theater auditions you'll do in the theater. So you'll be up on stage, and so your whole body, your whole physicality is part of it. So with a TV or film audition, they might have you like, okay, sit in that chair or just stand right there, and we're going to bring the camera into you, right? We're going to bring the camera.
Sure.
It's going to be like right here. So don't move a lot, kind of keep things, in this frame. And I feel like with a lot of theater auditions, one of the cool things but challenging parts is you're up on a stage, you can use your physicality, or if you're not used to using that, it's something that you got to kind of click on, because they're
sure.
seeing all of your body. You know what I mean? So if your arms are just kind of by your side, a limp, okay, maybe it doesn't feel like your whole body, below your neck is engaged, which I think is such an important thing to do. And doesn't mean you have to be, running all over the whole stage, but it does give you a bit of a freedom to kind of see, with some movement and physicality, what else you could find.
Yeah, I think because of the pandemic, it was all like self-tape and then like, call back over Zoom kind of thing. So it was a little different. So I haven't experienced that. But what I watched a video, I think it was Sir Ian McKellen. He was showing like exactly as you're describing. He's leaning back in a chair and he's like, if I want to portray that I'm nervous, I move my hand on the side of my leg, and the audience, it's towards the audience. They can see it, they feel it, but the character has no idea that I'm nervous. And I'm trying. So your whole body's acting at that point. If you want to move your leg, how you're sitting, how you're moving, all those things are very important when it comes to theater acting or auditions, which I was more open with my audition. Like I was like screaming towards the sky, like it was like more like kind of being bold in a way that felt real and grounded, but it was more, just you have your whole body. You're very aware of how your whole body and arms and legs sit. You're just like, let's do this.
Yeah, and I think I work with a lot of people that have maybe studied a lot of theater in college, and then they're coming out to do TV and film, and I think it's an interesting thing because where you're trying to reach in a theater can be much further away than the camera, right?
For
So
sure.
a lot of times people will say to me, people tell me my acting is too big, I need to bring it down. Well, part of that is because you can express with your body how you're feeling, and people further back can see that, right?
Yes.
So if you're just standing there and you're expressing it all in your face, people in the back of the theater, they're going to have no idea. They're not going to know if you're happy or you're sad or whatever. And so that, part of that physicality can help show that. Whereas with, film or TV, when the camera can come closer to you, then we don't need to show as much with our body. But I think one way it's really relevant is when you think about like a wide angle shot, like a medium and then a close up. So that's something that's interesting to think about. When they're doing establishing a bigger shot, you can do more that they're going to capture.
Yeah, I think with theater you get better. It's the quotes like TV to make money, or no, movies to make money, or TV to make money, movies to be famous, and then plays to get good. And I think there's a bit of a truth to that, because you can use your whole body. You get the whole widest frame, which is people's like in the theater, and then you can always bring that in. You can always go to the close up. You can always do a little bit less. This actually reminds me a lot of. I did a little bit of deep dive on theater stuff. I was looking up like little factoids and stuff, and it reminded me of. I took a lot of Greek and Roman mythology classes back in college, and there one of them was like a TV film, Greek and it was like somehow a blend. But what was cool is we watched this movie. It was Oedipus Rex, and they did it in 1957, I believe, and they filmed it just like it was back when the Greeks used to do it, which is they would wear full on masks. Did you know about this? They would like the actors on stage would wear a full mask that's like has this huge expression. So if they're sad, it's this like giant thing. And it had a couple of purposes. One, you could project more because it's like a mini speaker because it's a mask in your face.
Or
Two,
like a megaphone.
yeah, exactly. Two, actors can play different roles because their face isn't there. And also it allowed female actresses to play it because that was usually taboo and not done at the time. So they were like kind of finding sneaky ways to do it. But what was crazy is in this movie, it was an okay movie all around, but the part that blew my mind is when spoiler alert, when Oedipus realizes that he's been with his mom this whole time, and then she realizes it. There's this moment where the actress did such a phenomenal job where she slowly turns as she's realizing it, and he's off stage, kind of like deflecting it basically. And it's just this slow movement, and everything is just from her body. Nothing about her face. I mean, obviously the mask has like the horror look or whatever they did, but there's just this slow move, and it's burned into my brain as this fascinating moment of how you can portray so much with just a turn. It just depends. Like if you just quickly turn, that's not going to do anything. Like that's just like, wow, that's crazy news. Want to come over here, hubby? Like, that's a little different than a full on, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But yeah, it's super fascinating. I was shocked to reread that. I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, I when you said that, it reminded me. I heard a story when like I don't think it's in the play, but in the play Godzilla Carnage, by Yasmina Reza, which is one of my favorite playwrights.
I haven't read it, but you've told me to read it. A couple times.
Well, it's a great play. She also did Art, which is a play I've done. But there's James Gandolfini's in it, and there's a moment where it looks like he's going to like hug his wife, and then you think, oh, he's gonna hug her, and then he walks right past her to a liquor bottle. So it's like this great, like, oh, he's gonna hug his wife, and then he goes to like refill his drink, and at least it's like I said, like that's the story I heard, which shows what you're talking about with that physicality, where the audiences get to follow, and you're like, oh, look at this, beautiful, touching moment, and then it's not, and I think with what you're saying, yeah, money stuff aside, with that the quote you had, it's interesting because the other thing I was thinking about is I feel like film is very much a director's medium, and TV is very much a writer's medium because they're producers, and then I feel that theater is really a strong actor's medium. And that's one of the reasons I really, really recommend it for actors. And I think it's one of the reasons you see really strong actors coming out of places with great theater, and the backgrounds. Because once you're up on stage, and like you said, once it gets rolling, it's on you. And a lot of theater is like dialogue driven. You're not changing a lot of locations. You're in one location. You're in the family living room. You're at a bus station, and so it's not the settings that are keeping people's attention. It's the actors, and it's the relationships. And I think that's one of the really great things is it can be heavy lifting in a good way for an actor. And so then, if you're like, hey, I got to learn 100 pages of dialogue and learn about this character, and then you get an audition and it's like, okay, this is 4 pages. I can do that, For sure. And I think that's such a wonderful, that's one of the really cool things I think for actors in that medium, you know what I mean? Is that they get a lot of control in that sense.
Yeah. I basically just recorded all the lines, and then I use this app. I forget what it's called, but it's basically you can record your lines versus their lines and go through it. And I just, like an obsessive weirdo, just kept listening to it over and over again until I got the whole play under my belt. And then I had 3 auditions yesterday that were all a page each, and I was like, this is no biggie. I got this. It's like, you want me to? I can do these twice. Do you want me to do them twice in a row? So it's good. Yeah, you get to really work that muscle and work that expertise, I guess.
Well, and I think that also ties in with confidence, right? Yeah. So how do you as an artist or as an actor build your confidence? And I think there's different ways to do it for everybody, but being kind of in the gym, which can be a theater, which can be in a class, which can be doing self tapes, which can be meeting with other classmates and stuff, other people.
Mhm.
I think those reps in the gym that you're talking about, it's sometimes if people really write down how much they're working on their craft, whatever it is, sometimes they'd be surprised at like how little it is,
Yeah,
like I always,
so true.
I feel, there can be a disconnect. And so I think, anytime, uh, you can kind of push yourself to be working on it more is a really, really great thing, and a lot of times you got to think about it too. People are, if they're on a TV show, they're kind of forced to be there. I mean, they're being paid, but they're like being forced to act in a sense. So they're like, okay, acting again, and that's a lovely thing. But it also, we can let ourselves off the hook if we're like, well, okay, today, I got a lot going on, so I'm not going to do any acting. I'm not going to spend some time on it, and I think that can kind of do us a disservice. And that's one thing that I think that you get with really great theater if you're doing like 6 weeks of rehearsal leading up to a show. And this is leading to something else, which I'm curious, Corbin, what you think it's going to be like, which is when you do multiple the same show many, many, many times, because
Oh yeah.
that's a really interesting experience. What are you predicting for yourself with that?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been trying to
Yeah.
figure out what the best way to go about, because you don't want it to be the same, but you also kind of need it to be the same. You need to hit the same notes and hit the same all the beats. But
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a little bit of hiccups here and there that are going to be fun, and it's going to be like nice little accidents. Yeah, I don't know. I think you just got to be ready to roll with the punches. I honestly have no idea. I'm worried, but also excited at the same time. I think it's that
audience
adrenaline.
audience will report back as to what
Yeah.
happens. Yeah, I think, well, if you have any questions on that, that pop up, let me know. But I do think there's an interesting thing I've felt with different shows I've done, where there's the excitement and, getting to that opening night or that first night show or
Yeah,
those previews, and it's such an adrenaline thing, and you're like, I can't wait, and then it happens, and it can be wonderful. It could be a bit of a train wreck because there's a lot happening behind the scenes, and then you kind of get coasting, and then coasting isn't the right word, but you kind of get into the flow of it,
hmm,
and then I think then you like start to know and you understand it, and then I think it can slide into coasting, which is like, okay, now we all know.
yeah,
I know what you're doing, I know what I'm doing. And I think that's an interesting place where it's like, okay, how do I keep myself engaged? How do I continue to find new stuff? And to me, part of what I love about theater is like you've got those other actors there to kind of re-engage, you know what I mean, to
for
see
sure.
what's going on with them. And I think that's part of the exciting part about doing the same show over and over again, and you can keep exploring it and keep trying things. And hopefully you have other actors you're working with that are open to that. And I think that's
Mhm.
another thing, the ensemble nature of being in a theater can be really, really lovely. It can be really, really stressful.
For sure.
It can be a lot of things because you're
It's a
getting
lot
a
of
lot of
people.
it's a lot of people. You're getting a lot of personalities together.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, The Best Man. That's the name of the play by Gore Vidal. I think I said The Last Man, but it's The Best Man. But the reason I bring up that show too is we had like, I don't know what it was, like 14 actors all crammed in this
Ooh,
tiny backstage. I
yeah.
mean, there's a lot of us, or 12 or so. There's a lot,
Yeah.
and so you get to know each other, and that could be good or bad. But that's part of the nature of it, and um, I love being in a theater, um, right before anyone else is there,
Hmm,
and
hmm,
it reminds me of like, I played a lot of basketball growing up, and it reminds me of being in like a basketball gymnasium when no one else is in there, and I've just got me and my
hmm.
basketball, and I get to shoot, and there's such a cool feeling. It almost just like, I don't know. There's something lovely about it for me, and I think a theater kind of holds that same kind of magical, cool energy to it.
Yeah, I know.
No matter how big or small. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know you have a big sports background, or your love of sports, and you equate it to acting a lot. But I think I also am competitive, and like I did volleyball in high school and stuff, but I wasn't ever as deep as you have gone into basketball or things like that. But I do equate to that same feeling. There's a bit of like, this is my house. You're in there and
Mhm.
you're like, this is, because that's how I felt. I haven't done obviously the opening night yet, but the other day I was just kind of in there and I was like, cool. This is these walls are mine. Like obviously I'm not paying the rent, not doing anything, but it's a little bit of that. I did it. You know, I booked this. I'm the only person for this role, and I'm here.
Yeah, and I think Corbin, with that idea, it's like what it makes me think of is like your personal ownership. And I
Yes.
think feeling that over a role is really, really a great thing to have. And I think that is something that, when I work with people, when I am approaching a role myself, it's like, how do I feel ownership over this role? And with what you're saying, I think there's something really cool about getting to a theater early, about getting places early, and giving yourself time to kind of um, uh, 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 someone that I've studied with, Hugh O'Gorman, who's a great acting coach. He calls it, I think, crossing the threshold.
Mm.
And so it's like leaving everything kind of outside the theater that's going on outside the theater, and then kind of being in this space, and allowing yourself the time to kind of settle in, make it your own, have the ownership. And I think that's a great thing. A lot of times with roles, like I was talking about, with the mints, and you said I'm that kind of actor, which is interesting. You say that because the play I met my wife in, her best friend was the costume designer, and the budget was kind of tight, and she got me a suit that did not fit me, and I was like, I don't want a suit that doesn't fit me. I'll just wear my own suit. And she's like, well, then we have to pay you for it. And I was like, you don't have to pay me, blah, 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 and it turned into this thing. But I do think actors, without being a pain in the butt, you do want to fight for your character, and you do want to feel ownership over it. And hopefully you're part of a process where there is collaboration, and you are allowed to say, hey, this is something I think would be really, really neat. I think my character would wear this type of watch. You know what I mean? And hopefully you have a director or a team that's like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's figure out how we can make that work. I did a show, and they gave me did Fool for Love, and they gave me these like really dumpy shoes, and the guy was kind of dumpy, and the shoes were great, and I hadn't even asked for them. And one of the performances, the other actor stepped on it, and it came, my foot came out of the shoe, and so I was in a sock walking around with one shoe, one sock, and it was like so a happy accident. That was like, let's try to do that every night. We didn't, but like it was such a great kind of cool accident, and that was something that but having those kind of frumpy shoes that like barely stayed on my feet, it led to that. For sure. And I think having that ownership of the role, of your character, and what you're talking about, of feeling that also in the space, is such a cool thing. There's I feel like, Corbin, there's powerless actors who give everything away. There's powerful actors who can be kind of like, dicks about it, and there's empowered actors. And I feel like an empowered actor is like what you're talking about. And to me, that's who people want to work with. You know what I mean? Like a wonderful empowered actor. It's like, great. This is,
you're all in this project together. Like, it's not only on the director to tell you how to do it, what to do, or anything. So
yes,
like there's a moment where I have to pick up, it's like a Halloween-y story, so I have to pick up a Ouija board. So I'm picking it up and I'm putting it down on the stage to be front and center. And he's like, I want you to do it at this point. And I was like, it makes sense, but it doesn't fully make sense. So I just did it as I was doing my line. And he was like, love it. That's even better. Because it makes more sense to be like, I put all the letters on in chalk on the table. I'm like describing it as I'm putting it down. So like, because my back was turned, and I just didn't want it. It just felt a little robotic to do it fully the way. And he's more just trying it too. He's like, try it this way. It didn't work. Try it a different way. And I'm like, okay. And it's just kind of, I'm definitely dipping my toe in. I'm trying, like, that's not so much of the big thing of you're saying with the costume designer and making sure that all the things are accurate, or you got the watch or whatever. But it is kind of noticing other actors not being able to really dive into that. Like, they're just, okay, I will do it exactly as you say, director. Like, this is definitely how I'm going to do it, and it's going to be fine. Of course, it's nice to have direction, but you're all collaborating together. You're all trying to just make this thing stand on its feet, and who knows what the best answer floats to the top.
Corbin, I want to talk to you about something today.
Ooh, what is it?
It's Anchor.
Ooh, have you heard of it? I have heard of it. It's pretty exciting.
We're actually using it right now.
That we are.
Yep. What does Anchor have, Corbin?
Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Yes. And we are actually recording on our computers. We have not done it with our phone yet, though I'd like to try that at some point.
It sounds very easy. It's easy and totally free, which is the exciting part.
That is actually really nice that they don't charge you. I do know also when you're hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Makes it nice and easy. In fact, we looked at our numbers, and most of our listens are on iTunes right now.
Fancy.
And we have a listener in the Netherlands. Interesting.
I got a big Netherlands base.
Yeah. So everyone go out there, download the Anchor app if you're interested in starting a podcast. So you go to Anchor, or you can go to anchor.fm, anchor.fm to get started. It's easy to sign up. We found it easy, didn't we, Corbin?
Yeah, super easy. Check it out.
And we're not that smart.
Yeah,
so
half of us isn't.
You can do it. Half of us. Which half?
Me, of course. I wouldn't throw you under like that.
Beep, beep. That's the boss. Corbin just ran me over with. All right, everybody, go check out Anchor if you're interested in starting a podcast. It's a great place to start.
Definitely. Thanks so much.
When it comes to smaller budget stuff, when you are, I always panic when it comes to wardrobe if they don't have a wardrobe person, like a costume designer,
Yeah.
because I don't know, because they'll always ask, do you have khakis? And I'm like, I don't own khakis. And I feel weird about saying that. So it's like, is that just something you just have to own and be like, no, I don't? Or it's always a little bit of an awkward conversation to discuss wardrobe before they have to go, okay, we'll go out and buy you khakis. But yeah, what do you recommend when it comes to that discussion and
Sure.
Those landmines?
Of course. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And what that brings me back to is budget. And
Sure,
theater runs on a different budget, most theaters. I mean, I think if you're in New York and it's Broadway, or some theaters in Chicago, even some in LA, but for most theater, it's a really tight budget, and most shows, maybe break even or they lose money. And so when you're dealing with wardrobe, when you're dealing with like them asking, hey, what do you have to help out? It's all to kind of keep the budget contained, or even just keep whatever budget you can for the stuff you have to have. And, sometimes they'll do that. Like, you can do commercials and they'll say, hey, bring cool jackets or jeans. And, with SAG after rules, they do pay you for that, which is kind of cool. But they like stuff that looks lived in, you know what I mean? They like stuff that looks like you, that they know is going to fit you. A lot of times they just use all their stuff anyways, but they have you bring it. And I think with theater, I would say the main landmines is just to be honest with them. And I think that's a big thing that I've been finding more and more is being a good communicator is so important in our business. And so with what you're talking about, I don't think they've got 100 little fires or problems or things they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so if you say I don't have khakis, that's another thing on their list, but they're trying to put out fires. They're trying to check things off the list. And so then they have to discuss. It kind of becomes a little bit their problem of okay, is it important that he has khakis, or can it be something else? Do we need to cut that out of the budget? And those are just, decisions, somewhat difficult decisions, but you can't usually have everything. And so you just have to, they ultimately have to make those decisions. I would say part of what can happen also is, in a certain sense, it's kind of not your problem. And what I mean by that is that's part of their head. If they have a specific thing and a specific vision, it's well, that, I just don't own that. And I, to me, then it bounces back to them. And I think there's certain parts that, an actor can be a part of, and there's certain parts that it's kind of not your job to be a part of. And
Gotcha.
So that's where I think the communication of letting them know, being, clear about it, or, if it's yeah, I do. And then you're thinking, I got to go borrow it from a friend, and they live far, and then it just gets so way complicated, even for you. Right. Versus just letting them know. And I think, like I said, the communication thing, that's something that I just keep finding more and more. The more I find when I work with actors, whether I'm, directing or casting or whatever, hey, I'm going to be 15 minutes late, or I'm not going to be able, that even that simple text, we were just talking about that, in someone was just, I think, in class of why would someone confirm an audition and then not show up? And it does happen. Life happens. But what really, I think, annoys casting, or annoys if you got rehearsal, is when the other side doesn't know about it, when actors don't.
Just no communication, or
no communication. Yeah. And I know it sounds obvious, but trust me, we've all had long days. We've all had, rough days. We've all had the cars had problems. but the communication then is like, okay, great. We know we're not waiting for this person. You
Yeah.
know, I've done that where we're doing a casting callback and they're like, this person's coming. We really like them. We're going to wait. And then we're waiting and waiting.
And
We
they
haven't
just
heard anything.
never show up.
And then they're like, oh, they actually canceled, and you're like, oh, well, we waited, so that kind of that courtesy. And so I just tie that back to if they're asking things like that, 100%, I would just say, just be honest and don't feel bad about it that you don't have a leather jacket. You know what I mean? Do you have a leather jacket? No, I don't have one, or I don't have one that I have an old crummy one. I don't have a fancy one. And that's,
Yeah, I envision it almost like the director or producer has a clipboard and they're just like,
right.
Khakis, yes, no. Yeah. I
Yes.
think I've cut it out there, but
Yes.
basically, yeah, it's just a clipboard, just khakis, yes, no, and you just go yes or they just want to, they literally just want to mark that, and
Yeah.
you're right. I think it's the budget. I think just money is always an awkward conversation because they're literally like, can I save $10 here? Do I have to actually buy you khakis at a thrift store?
Yeah.
And it's but it's fun. Like the khakis they end up getting me because it's like a 1920s style play. They're a little frumpy, and it's like I'm dressed up for Halloween as a golfer, and it's like it just feels like this character. He like doesn't care. Like he's just a little bit of a prankster, a little like having fun, and it's just a little frumpy. Like, yeah, I just threw this together last minute, And that I wouldn't have had that, Like I have a very clean cut clothing, so it's just it's nice that I ended up being honest. I think because that was the only option I had, but two, it led to this beautiful moment of having these weird clothing that I would never own on my own, which is fun. That's part of what we do. We get to step into this completely different reality we're not used to. They just want to cross off that stuff.
they really do. And I think, the other thing I was just thinking about when you were saying that, Corbin, is for artists or actors, you're going to be collaborating with lots of different type of people.
Yes.
And some like directors are going to be real specific and they're going to want to try to, really micromanage a lot of stuff. And as an actor, sometimes you got to breathe through that and say, okay, and then sometimes you're going to have a director who's like going to let a whole, first act go by and have like two notes, and we love to collaborate. That's part of what's really cool about what we do is we come together as like a family, we do our thing, and then and that happens, in TV and film and in theater. But you're also navigating that water of getting to know someone new and trying to figure out, where they're coming from, what their vision is, how you can get on board with that, how they can kind of get on board with your vision. And that can be difficult, and I think, I guess what I'm thinking about with that is how you establish relationships, right? On set, whether that's in theater or whether that's on TV and film. And sometimes, if you're coming into a TV show and you're doing like, a co-star or a guest star, you're kind of coming into their world. So I always think you want to just kind of be ready and present and kind of, you don't have to be overly gregarious. You don't have to be shut down, but that's a different world sometimes than if you're on a play and you're like, okay, we're going to be spending 3 months together. Right. And so you have a different type of rapport.
It's a weird analogy, but it feels like starting a new job where you're like the newbie on the block, or going to summer camp where you're all just together. You're just like, we're here, let's go. Rather than just like, oh, what's your name? Oh, okay, yeah, like you're on my turf a little bit. Like, let's get this underway. It's such a unique experience between theater and TV and film. Like that's what's blowing my mind through this whole experience is the uniqueness.
Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking, and this is for everybody out there. One of the cool things about doing theater is the audience. We haven't really chatted about that. There's an amazing, and I guess if you do a multicam comedy,
sure,
then you do have the audience, which is pretty cool. And you also feel that in theater. One of the shows I did was micro theater, and that was cool where we stayed in the same space and it was like a 10-minute show, and then the audience rotated rooms, so they got to see like 5-6 shows in one night. And each group that came in had kind of a different energy, and you'll find that. But it was interesting doing like 5 of those in a night. But you're gonna find that too, Corbin. And it's such a cool thing when you have a great audience that's like laughing and receptive, and it feeds you. Maybe that's a Saturday night show, and then you do like a Sunday matinee, and the audience is really quiet, or they're like eating stuff. I remember I did a show in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills, there's a theater called Theater 40. And I just remember like, on a Sunday matinee, there was like, an older couple there, and the husband kept being like, well, what did he say? And she's like, he
Oh
said he loves
no.
her. Oh yeah, yeah. So she would like translate to him, like you were hearing all that, and like, so it can be wonderful, it can be frustrating.
Yeah.
The show I met my wife in, I remember we were doing a performance, and it sounded like someone had this like terrible cough. Okay, so we just hear this like, and we're like, what is wrong with that person? Like, what is going
Dying?
on
Yeah.
out there? Yeah, are they dying? And turned out someone had brought their dog into the theater.
Oh, it's a dog. Oh my
There was
god.
a dog.
Oh.
So we did a show, and then another time, oh, this is funny. Another time, we were at a theater, and there was a theater right next to us, and this person realized like 10 minutes into our show they were supposed to be at the other show, at the other theater, and so they're trying to like sneak out, and like they tripped and fell on like the bleacher style, and so like they made all this noise, they dropped everything, and we're in the middle, and like they're trying to sneak out quietly, and then they tripped, and it
Makes
like
it
made
way
all
worse.
this. Oh, made it way worse.
Why does that happen when you're sneaking through? Like, I remember in high school, I would sneak through the house to like get some food in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It was the loudest I would ever be.
Yeah,
I'm never that
it's,
loud. But when you're trying to be quiet in a theater setting,
Yeah.
you're just they're kicking some cans that are apparently there,
100%. And that audience, you will feel that energy,
For sure.
good or bad or indifferent. I think that's part of even if you're not, even if you're not addressing the audience, you're gonna feel that energy and feed off of it. And I think that's like a really interesting thing where that can kind of be, highs or lows.
For sure.
Um, you
Kind of
know,
tying into what you said a bit back now, but also with this, the director, a couple of his notes are, let's just keep the energy up. And he's like, you'll feel it more once you're live, like once there are actually audience members there. But my question is, obviously, yeah, that's going to be there, right? The adrenaline's pumping. You're going to like perform and do it. But you also kind of want to be true, right? That's a heightened level that isn't accurate to the play. This is like a Halloween scary seance, it shouldn't be like, hi, like I'm here. So how do you suppress it but also enjoy it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's like a bit of
Yeah.
a balance between this is happening, but maybe cap it a little bit, or like what do you do you like meditate outside for a sec? What is your go-to move to prep for those moments?
Well, I think number one, and maybe this is something you've done, Corbin, but you want to think about what your fourth wall is. So what is it facing the theater? A lot of people just say, oh, it's the theater. Well, no, if you're doing a seance, that wall actually has stuff. It's got a mirror, it's got a window, it's got whatever. So when you do look out, or let's say, or you glance that way, you are, let's say, seeing audience, but like in, your imagination, in the world you've created, there's actually stuff there. I think a lot of people forget that. So they either just want to kind of avoid the audience, you know what I mean? They don't want to look over there, or they look and they, and that's, I've done plays where you have to like address the audience, and that can be difficult if it's like someone, you know what I mean? You make eye contact with someone, sometimes you want to kind of avoid that for some people because it gets you out of your, gets you out of your world. Some people might be fine, but that's definitely something that, I preferred. Was like, okay, if I see my, my aunt in the audience, like that's going to affect me. You know what I mean? So,
Or a coughing dog.
Or a coughing dog,
Distracting.
Jesus, yeah. So I think that something with the fourth wall can be a great way. And I think the other thing is I would say that you being affected is a bit more of an internal thing than external. Yeah. So it's internally you're feeling it, oh great, this is going great or not going well, versus an external like, oh, they're loving it. So now I'm blah 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 blah, and I think that is part of kind of translating that energy. So that you don't like speed up a lot, or and you're kind of really changing things based on that. It's more just like you're kind of absorbing that and kind of going into the flow. And I think that's a really good thing to be thinking about. And it also feels like one of those things that it's why I think like if someone has tried like stand-up comedy at an open mic versus they're thinking about it, once you try it, you're like, oh, now I understand what that feels like, right? And if you watch it, you're like, okay, I could do better than this person, this guy, this gal, you know what I mean? But then you get up there, you're like, oh, I see like what the challenges are and what the rewards are. And it does feel like one of those things where once you've done it, or you've done it a couple of times, you start to know what that feeling is. And it can be a little difficult to describe until you're up there, Corbin, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like there's like sometimes you have in the crowd like one person who like let's say really laughs, and that can be awesome because then a bunch of other people laugh, and so like that laugh, like one of my good buddies has a really great laugh, and like when he's at a show, it's like I hear his laugh, and then I hear a bunch of other people laugh,
You know
and
it's working.
yeah, it is great. It is great
Yeah.
to have, but I think it would be disingenuous to like not hear the laugh. And part of that, I think, Corbin, I come from improv. And so with improv, you like follow the laugh. So if people are laughing at something, your ear is tuned to that. So you're like, okay, let's keep going down that path. You know what I mean? Like this is working. People like that. But I really think that you need to be like have an awareness so you're not kind of in like a robot mode. You know, the I mentioned it before, but so I met my wife in this play called The Maiden's Prayer by Nikki Silver, and we were doing a show, and to get to the backstage, there was a screen door that you had to go through, and in one of the performances, Corbin, I noticed the button for the screen door fell onto the ground.
Oh no.
So the door was locked. Okay. And I'm up on stage and you can't communicate that with everyone because you're in the middle of the show. So I'm panicking.
This really presses my buttons.
Yes. Yeah. They're like, that line's not in the script. What's John's talking about,
Yeah.
And the thing was, I think I had kind of seen it. So I left the door the door a little bit open, but the actress, now my wife, she came through that door and I knew it was going to shut. I knew she'd shut, I just think that's what and so she came out, shut it. And then I was like, oh my God, I know she has a scene and then she storms off through that, thing.
Yeah.
And so I knew it was coming, and so it was really hard because I was like, we got to do something about this, but I'm in this scene and I'm trying to problem solve as I'm trying to be in this scene. Because I know what's coming. And so the scene's happening and I'm kind of like a little bit out of it with like my lines and stuff because I'm thinking about that. And then she storms off and I'll never forget that sound of her like trying the door of like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And and I was like, I knew exactly what was going on. And so I think she like, I think my character's name, I don't know if it was Paul, whatever. She said my character's name. So I came over there and then just as hard as I could, Corbin, I just went, pretty much like, like pretty much pulled the whole thing on the, and then she left, but I knew it was coming, and it was just such a funny, gotta roll with the punches. Cause that's a difference with if it's a TV or film, we cut, we reset, we fix the button, blah, blah. In the show, we got to keep going. You know what I mean? You got to be able to be on your toes. The button's gone. The button, it was on the ground, but it's like, I didn't know where it was. I just knew it wasn't in there, Oh my gosh. It's so, then afterwards you're like, and that's kind of the fun, I think, is like, happy accidents, those are the memories. And then afterwards, you're like, oh my God, can you believe that happened? Can you believe,
those are those moments that like stick with you forever. Because anything perfect is just going to be like, yeah, that's exactly how I imagined it would go. And then this is the moment that you're excited to relive and then fall in love with Andy Booby.
Yeah. And I'm even thinking of that happens with lines where if you kind of screw up a line, in TV or film, you get a chance to like, okay, let's redo it. But, if you're doing a show on a Friday night and, I remember that happened to me once where I like screwed up a line and then my partner was like, and then I tried to fix it, but then he was off. So then he was off because I had put him off, and then it was like the whole scene just like, yeah. And then for a while, I just remember us staring at each other, and like we were like, "Whose line's next?" You know what I mean? You're like trying to figure out some business as you're like walking on the stage, and you're like, "Am I going? And you're going? Where are we?" And that you feel it. You're like sweating. You're like, "Oh God." But you get through it, and then afterwards, you're like, "What happened there? I don't know. And okay, well, next show's tomorrow night. So you also you learn a bit of resilience of staying in there, even though maybe you want to, jump out, And actually I was thinking about that with improv. I remember when I first started improv, if a scene was going not well, my instinct, what I want to do was like slowly creep off stage. You know what I mean? But you can't do that. You can't lose your, you gotta go down with the ship, you gotta go down together. If you're going down, hopefully you're not. But I think that's part of, a theater thing too, is like, whether we all love each other, whether we don't, whether we're getting along or not, it's like we're all on this ship together. So once
we have a thing to do here, let's make sure we do it the best of our abilities. You can't just be like, every audience cut.
Cut. We need a break. We need some time out.
This would be different. Yes, I've been liking this deep dive on theater because it's such a new world for me. It's such a old world for the world. Like I think it's such one of the, not the oldest profession, obviously. It's the one of the oldest professions, but it's such a unique experience to be a part of this and kind of I don't know. I feel like I'm growing already, and that's really all I want with every experience I do, acting or otherwise. It's just putting one foot in front of the other and learning as you go.
I love that, Corbin. And I was just thinking, especially maybe if it's a little more classical plays, sometimes it can be like, well, does this apply to like modern acting? If I, you know what I mean? And what I would say is my answer to that would be, yes, it does, because you're falling in love with language, you're falling in love with communication, you're falling in love with relationships, and that's all in, whether you're doing Shakespeare or Greek tragedies, or you're doing something more like Tennessee Williams, or
Mhm.
some of the newer plays. And I think like that's what's really cool about going into it is like learning to use words, learning to express yourself. I think all that is very applicable,
For sure.
learning to use your whole body. So I just think it's a great. I love that you're into it, and I want to check in more with your experience. Um, and if people listening, if you have questions or thoughts that you want answered, or topics that you want us to kind of talk about in this space, let us know. You know what I mean? Put a comment in there, because we definitely, I think there's a lot to unpack here and unmine, and we want to have some people from the theater world on the show, and I think that'll be great. That'd give us some great insight, directors and actors and writers, and talk about their experience. So yeah, I think it's great.
Thanks so much, everybody.